Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're completely dismantling the traditional rules of success. We're going to dig into the exact mental models the ultra-wealthy use to build absolute freedom, and, maybe more importantly, uncover the hidden systems that keep so many incredibly smart people completely trapped. Let's just dive right in.
So, I want to start with a question that might seem obvious, but honestly, it's pretty unsettling. Why are the hardest working people you know still struggling? Seriously, think about it for a second. We've all been sold this idea that if you just put in relentless effort, success is guaranteed, right? But if you look around, the folks grinding the longest hours are usually the ones furthest from true financial independence. So why exactly does playing by society's rules leave so many exhausted people feeling stuck on a treadmill?
Well, Warren Buffett has this brilliant observation that perfectly illustrates what's going on here. He said, "The chains of habit are too light to be felt until they are too heavy to be broken." And that's a profound realization. You see, you aren't actually being held back by a lack of effort. You're being held back by the invisible, really comfortable programming that society installed in you from day one. I mean, things like assuming a standard 9-to-5 commute is just how life works, or believing that just being busy is the exact same thing as being productive. These daily, seemingly harmless little routines, they act like invisible chains that quietly lock you right into the middle class.
Which brings us to Section 1, the hustle illusion.
Okay, hustle culture is literally a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it runs almost entirely on our guilt. The societal lie tells us that wealth is built by the hour, like you're just laying bricks. But the mathematical truth, the data tells a totally different story. Grinding 18 hours a day is really just a system designed to use your labor to make someone else wealthy, not you. True wealth is actually a byproduct of leverage and asymmetric decisions. You don't get rich just by working harder. You get rich by working on the right things.
Now, to put this into perspective, there's a fascinating number that emerges from Stanford research, and that number is 55. It turns out that after working 55 hours a week, human productivity just falls off a cliff. It drops to almost zero. So someone working 70 hours a week is actually producing the exact same output as someone working 55 hours. Those extra 15 hours, they aren't just wasted time. They actively produce exhaustion, errors, and really poor decisions. The traditional system needs you busy, because a perpetually exhausted person, well, they never have the cognitive energy left to step back and build their own empire.
So, instead of selling their hours, the absolute wealthiest individuals shatter those biological constraints of time by using 4 powerful forms of infinite leverage. First, there's other people's time, which obviously breaks that standard 24-hour limit. Then there's other people's money, which when used strategically, massively accelerates growth. Third is technology, basically a tireless 24/7 workforce. And finally, media, like writing a book or coding software. You build that asset once and it compounds, paying you forever while you literally sleep.
Moving right along to Section 2, the invisible handcuffs.
Let's talk about how the middle class unwittingly builds their own prisons. Investor Paul Graham calls this the anchor of possessions. Look, when you finally start making a little more money, the instinct is to immediately reward yourself, right? We all do it. But here's the catch. Every luxury purchase you make doesn't just cost you cash, it acts as a mental and physical anchor. When you upgrade to a bigger house or take on a massive monthly car payment, you drastically raise your baseline operating costs. And suddenly, your tolerance for risk drops to absolute zero. You literally can't quit a toxic job or start a risky business because you are completely chained to those monthly payments.
Let's break down the massive difference between being rich and being wealthy, because the math here is brilliant. Take someone earning $200,000 a year. On the outside, they look incredibly successful. Luxury car, big house, but with zero savings and high overhead, they're living in a highly visible, incredibly fragile cage. Now compare that to someone earning $70,000 a year who drives a used car and rents a modest place, but has $300,000 sitting in the bank. That person possesses true wealth. It's the invisible, unshakable power of having options. Wealth isn't about what you spend. It's the capital you keep that actually buys your freedom.
Next up, Section 3, the power of no. Right from childhood, we're taught that saying yes makes us good, agreeable people. But what actually happens at the highest levels of success? There's this famous story from 1991 when Warren Buffett and Bill Gates first met at a dinner party. Bill's father asked everyone at the table to name the single greatest factor for monumental success. Without skipping a beat, both Bill and Warren instantly wrote down the exact same word: focus. Now, focus isn't about physically staring at a computer screen until your eyes bleed. Actually, scratch that. It's completely different. As Steve Jobs showed when he went back to a struggling Apple in 1997 and killed off hundreds of products to focus on just 4, focus is the violent, systematic elimination of distractions. It's the strategic and relentless application of the word no. Think about it. Every single time you say yes to a mediocre opportunity, you are mathematically eliminating your ability to say yes to a truly spectacular one. You can actually start defending your cognitive energy today by implementing what's basically a 2-step masterclass in rejection. Step 1 is the 24-hour rule. Never, ever agree to anything immediately. Always create a buffer to ask yourself what you're truly sacrificing by saying yes. Step 2, embrace social friction. Seriously, a polite but firm no is a complete sentence. You have to fiercely guard your most sacred vault, which is your time. If you really want to be exceptional, you just have to get comfortable with being temporarily disliked by the average person.
All right, let's move into Section 4, the communication multiplier.
It is honestly tragic how many exceptionally educated, high IQ people stay hopelessly trapped right beneath the corporate ceiling. Why? Because they think raw intelligence is enough. It's not. It absolutely doesn't matter if your technical baseline is sky high. If your communication multiplier is 0, the market will mathematically erase all of your towering genius. You could literally be the greatest coder or financial analyst on the planet, but if you can't persuade, inspire, and clearly translate those complex ideas to others, well, your brilliance is just going to stay locked right inside your own head.
A perfect historical example of this is the contrast between Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. Wozniak had this massive, raw technical genius. I mean, he literally built the early Apple computers. But without Steve Jobs, who had this almost terrifying ability to communicate and create a reality distortion field around their products, those computers might have just remained a dusty hobbyist project in a garage. Jobs was the multiplier. The system doesn't just automatically hand out rewards for raw intellect. It rewards the translation of that value to the wider world.
But hey, communication isn't just about charismatic stage speaking either. Take Jeff Bezos. He famously banned PowerPoint at Amazon, effectively sparing everyone from death by bullet points and those soul-crushing corporate meetings. Instead, he required his executives to write structurally complete 6-page narrative memos. And get this, meetings would start with 30 minutes of dead silence just so everyone could sit and read them. Why? Because bullet points hide lazy thinking. Writing a rigorous narrative forces the kind of deep, precise thought that you actually need to build a trillion-dollar monopoly. Simply put, clear writing forces clear thinking.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, the retirement fantasy.
Okay, so let's say you've done it all. You've optimized your time, mastered communication, and built real wealth. There's still one deeply flawed, mathematically dangerous endgame society is trying to sell you: traditional retirement. The whole idea that you hit 65, stop working entirely, and just coasted to the sunset? For a lot of folks, that's a total fantasy. Brace yourselves, because $315,000 is the average out-of-pocket healthcare cost an American couple retiring today is going to face over the rest of their lives. And that completely excludes long-term care. People spend decades planning for beach vacations, but completely fail to dedicate a single dollar to the mathematical certainty that the human body eventually wears out. The crucial point here is that if you rely on outdated retirement math from the 1990s, your golden years are going to be pretty rough. The famous 4% withdrawal rule worked beautifully back in 1994 when bond yields were high and inflation was totally contained. But in our modern reality, between record inflation, compounding medical costs, and, let's face it, failing government safety nets, a portfolio that just stops growing and shifts entirely into safe cash and bonds is basically just quietly bleeding to death.
So to actually thrive, you need a new blueprint for the endgame. Just delaying retirement by one single year can add anywhere from $150,000 to $300,000 to your portfolio's final value simply through untouched compounding. You absolutely have to keep holding productive assets that outpace inflation, and you've got to build a dedicated healthcare reserve. But above all, and this is key, you have to realize that stopping work entirely actually accelerates mental and physical decline. The true goal isn't to just quit working, it's to gain the absolute financial freedom to choose work that is deeply, deeply meaningful to you.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, provocative thought to carry into your day. The heaviest chains holding you back aren't on your wrists. They're in your daily habits, your unexamined spending, and your inability to say no. The clock is moving right now. Are you building an architecture of freedom with your time, or are you just watching it disappear?